6 o'clock special meeting here of the Atherton City Council. Can we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Carlson?
Here.
Councilmember Dobby?
Here.
Councilmember McKeithen? Here. Vice Mayor Lewis?
Here.
Mayor Whitmer?
Here. Okay, moving on to item 1, public comments. This is, there will be public comments after each of the 4 items that are on the agenda, which has been dictated by the public. But if somebody can't stay, we're willing to take their comments at this time. Are there any public comments on an overall basis?
Yes.
Peter.
I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank the council, the town manager and the town attorney for your prompt response to the petition from the citizens and for your attention to the items that they've asked you to address. So thank you very much.
Are there any other public comments? Okay, so seeing none, I will close the public comments and we'll move to the regular agenda. First item on the regular agenda is, should the location of the library be decided by a town-wide vote by the residents? Is there any discussion by the council before we take public input?
Well,
We can always come back, but it's up to you, whatever you'd like.
let's have
Okay, seeing no additional public or council comments, let's move on to public input on item number 1. Are there any public comments with regards to should the location of the library be decided by a town-wide vote of the residents?
Just one brief comment on the location of the library. I don't think that the location should be ultimately decided until such time as a facilities master plan has been developed and put through a suitable approval process.
Okay, thank you. That's item number 4, but I appreciate your comment. Any other public comments?
That's number 1.
Okay, seeing no public comments, I'll close public comments and we'll come back to the council. Is there any discussion at the council level on item number 1? Should we have a vote to decide the location of the library?
We already made that decision. Yeah.
Yes.
actually, not really, but go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think this is sort of a moot question. If you think there's something more to it, I'd like to hear it.
Well, the ballot language is quite misleading and confusing if you're going to compare it to this question, should the location of the new library be decided by a town-wide vote of the residents? The ballot measure is, should the town of Atherton construct a new library in Holbrook Palmer Park using funds dedicated for library purposes only by replacing the main house and some surrounding patios and walkways. So that is not a straightforward yes or no question. It's a run-on compound sentence. Somebody could say, no, I don't want to have it be built in the park. Or, yes, I do want to have it be built in the park, but I don't want to replace the main house. So, I mean, there's 2 or 3 parts to the sentence. But anyway, it doesn't, so in a sense, it's not just a moot point because the question that the petitioners were asking is very straightforward. Because the library is such an important civic project, should the location of the new library be decided by a town-wide vote by the residents? There are hundreds of petitions that signed the, hundreds of residents that signed the petition that are asking that question. And I think that we should be listening to these residents and considering these options, which we did not do when this ballot language was written. There were also hundreds of petitions signed by residents calling for what this other gentleman asked to have is a master plan before we decide where to put a new library and before we decide the best place either for a new town center complex. So I believe that we should be listening to our residents. In a sense, it is a moot point, Councilmember Carlson, because we do have a ballot measure that is going to be voted on by the residents, but I do not believe that it answers the question that's was petitioned to be answered.
Any other comments from the council?
Well, I think, with all due respect to my colleague here on the left, I think we're splitting straws when we get into this kind of thing. We've had enough splitting straws already, and I don't think we want to get into any more.
Any other council comments? Are there any motions? We've already made the decision to put this ballot on the November 6th, this measure out for the November 6th ballot. And I think that we've met the intent of this item number 1. We don't have to vote on this, but I'd like to see whether or not anybody wants to make any motion.
So,
I don't see any need to start any further action myself.
I don't either.
I don't see that the agenda gives us the ability to take action. There's no actionable items on here.
We'll take a, there's a question on the agenda, you can take a vote, but
Okay.
majority of council.
But we don't have to take action on this one because, you know, in my mind, I think we've already taken the action.
If you want to vote, I'll make a motion.
Well, Mr. Mayor, you know you don't have to vote on every item, ever,
Yeah.
on any agenda. So, I mean, just because this is a petition doesn't change that. The council, if you've got some action you want to take, you should make a motion. If you don't want to take any action, that's a nebulous vote that means
That's not
nothing.
what boilerplate.
Right, okay. So I think that the majority of the council members think that it's kind of a moot point at this point in time, and that we shouldn't vote on this. If you disagree, Vice Mayor?
No, I do, it is a moot point for this upcoming election since the period has passed to put a measure on the ballot. It's unfortunate that the measure that has been put on the ballot doesn't ask this question, because I truly believe that whatever the outcome of this ballot in November, that the location of a new library should be decided by the residents. And that goes on to question number 2 that the petitioners requested. So where should the library be built? Holbrook Palmer Park is one choice. The Newtown Center area, which is generally the existing administrative and police department area, or the current location of the library.
Mr.
Can we get on number 2 when we're on number 2?
Yeah, we're gonna have to
Are we
wrap up
moving off
one
of number
first.
1? Are we done with number 1?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we're moving on to number 2. Number 2, where should the library be located? Holbrook Palmer Park, Newtown Center, current location. Would you like to start, Vice Mayor?
Again, that's a follow-on to the simple question of where should the location be decided by a townwide vote. I believe that where should the new library be built or located is something that the residents should have input on. I've said that for many, many months, years in fact, that the residents need to have input on the location of the new proposed library.
Jared?
I think any action on this ought to wait till the November election.
I have to concur with that sentiment. Are there any other council comments before we take public input? So I'd like to open up the public input, is that okay? All right, we'll take public input on number 2. The question was, where should the library, the new library be located? A, Holbrook Palmer Park, B, Newtown Center, C, current location. If you have public comment, please come up to the podium and...
Peter Carpenter, 1 Large Drive. I'd like to second the comment that Councilman Carlson just made. I think that with the information that will be provided by the voters in November, that it would be very appropriate at that time for the council to then address this question And my advice to you, subject to the input from the town attorney, who knows these things much better, is that you table the motion until such time as you have the results of the election.
Any other public comment?
Bob Roser, 23 Wilburn Avenue. I guess the thing that confuses me on the measure is, what was the intent of the way it was written?
Here on this,
Yeah, because...
well, this is a public petition.
Yeah, right, the public petition says, do you want to vote for a new library in the park replacing the current building? So if we say, as the public, we say no, does that mean that the building could be built in other locations in Old Palmer Park?
I would assume that it wouldn't be approved to be put in the park.
Okay, so you're saying this vote will say it will not be in the park?
I'll have to defer to the attorney, but that's what I would think.
The intention of the council, as staff got it, was not in the park. In the park, if it's in the park, it's at one specific location. Otherwise, if it's prohibited, it's not in the park.
So if the vote comes back no, then it won't go in the park. It'll go in one of the other locations that was covered by the PIR.
Any other location would be prohibited by the language of the ballot measure itself.
Okay, that wasn't clear to me. So you're on record then saying that if a no vote comes in, the library will not be in any location in Old Palmer Park. That's what I just heard.
That's
correct.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Any other public comments on number 2? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. Any other discussion?
I think we just, suggested we table this. I think that's probably a good idea to wait until after the November election and see whether it's needed or not.
I concur.
I agree with that, and of course, you know, the EIR did cover 2 additional locations, and if the library measure comes back as a no, I'd want to look in depth in what the pros and cons are of the other 2 locations that were studied in this area before I would make a decision on it. So, any other comments from any other council members? No. Okay. So then we'll move on to item number 3. Should Atherton withdraw from the countywide library JPA? So for the public's knowledge and before we start council discussion, we've already asked the city manager to look into the details of the JPA and also understand what the costs are of associating, you know, if we had our own library, what the rules and regs would be and what the cost impact would be, so that the council could consider that at a future meeting, which I think right now is about 2 months from now. Is there any other council discussion on this item?
I concur, since staff is beginning to look at this item. If I may have been misreading what I read in the paper, but it seemed like there had been some actions taken in Sacramento also about public libraries in the recent past, some legislation which needs to be looked at, as well as the Joint Powers Authority documents. And hopefully when we have all that information, we can take a look at it and see what we think.
I certainly don't have nearly enough information to make a decision on this at the present time, so I would concur that I would wait until we get the staff report and see exactly what it comes up with, and at that time we can look at it again.
Okay. She didn't look like she wanted to say anything. Sorry.
So this is really a complicated issue. If anybody's taken a look at the JPA, I have been talking to the city manager for months now, asking for an opinion from our attorney on the language in the JPA agreement. I've read the JPA agreement, I've looked at it. I'm not an attorney. I don't have a law degree or any experience in that, but there is a lot of ambiguities in the JPA agreement. The original agreement was drafted in 1999. It was subsequently restated, I think in 2003, and ratified in 2004. my reading of the JPA agreement is that if we withdraw, we will assume all responsibility for providing all of the library services to our residents in our surrounding area. That's something that, you know, we would have to look hard at doing, and whether or not that would be something that we want to take responsibility for. And that the county would pay to us all subsequent library property tax proceeds, which are collected in our jurisdiction. And that it would be upon mutual agreement to allow us to retain whatever books and furniture and everything else that has been provided over the years by the county JPA. Well, I don't have any problem with maybe putting our arms around that part of it, but again, if I'm reading this correctly, and I hope that I am reading it incorrectly, there is a whole section on what happens upon termination or withdrawal from the JPA. And it appears to me that it says that you give 1 year notice to withdraw, but the withdrawal of any party from this agreement, if a party withdraws from this agreement, such party shall not be entitled to the return of any funds contributed to the library JPA. Does that mean all of our accumulated funds? I see some heads shaking yes. Or does that mean when they wrote it originally back in '99, they never imagined that Atherton's donor city funds would be so great? For instance, I mean, our percentage of our donor city funds, of our contribution to the library fund for this year alone is about $850,000. 3.2% of every $100 of property tax revenue goes to library funds. And that number is continuing to grow and grow and grow. And so I don't think maybe this sentence means that if you withdraw, that annual amount that you would get, like say for San Carlos, that they would retain that to make sure that there's a smooth transition for that next year, because you've got to give a year's notice. So maybe that was the intent, and not the intent to keep all of the accumulated donor city funds. Because those donor city funds, those funds are Atherton's tax funds. They should go to Atherton's library services or other library-related services.
But that's what the staff report would go over, and Mr. Connors would be participating in that, don't you think?
No, I understand that, but I'm saying that we've been asking for this for a number of months, and so I haven't received it. So these are questions that I think that we really need to very clearly focus. And I see some heads saying, well, yes, that would be a terrible, terrible thing and an injustice. And I have a hard time thinking that that was the intent of the authors of the JPA early on. I think the authors and the JPA itself want the best for our cities and the best for our libraries.
I would hope so too.
The other thing about the JPA is that I understand that the agreement can be amended with a 2/3 vote of the members, and the JPA members include Atherton and Brisbane, Menlo Park, Portola Valley, and about 11 other cities. Excuse me, right? Millbrae, not Redwood City either. Thank you. So that's something maybe we need to go to the members and say, this language in here, it needs to be revised. We need to revisit the JPA agreement so that we're protected. I had read a communication that was that was written by an attorney and one of the first chairpersons of the JPA, who said that when they wrote the JPA agreement, it was purposely kept general and vague to take into consideration how the city's funds would grow, and so I think that there's room for that kind of modification of the JPA agreement. And I would urge our city manager and our city attorney and our JPA representatives to do the right thing for our town in the JPA committee to protect Atherton and Atherton's general city funds.
Okay. Let's take public comment on number 3.
Peter Carpenter, One Large Tribe. My biggest concern with the JPA is that I've had a number of experiences with JPAs, and they work best when the contribution that the members make is related to the benefit that they get. And the thing I find most disturbing about this JPA is we've got a lot of people who can vote on this and who can outvote Atherton very easily, who can literally contribute nothing to the JPA in terms of financial support. And I don't feel the taxpayers are well represented by that system. I would much rather see our elected officials, the 5 of you and your successors, if you ever have any, to be the people who decide how these dollars are used. And I think to suggest that these tax dollars belong to the JPA is just wrong. Now, Mr. Connors may turn out to disagree with me when he looks at that, but as a taxpayer, I believe I've paid these funds to the town of Atherton for the town of Atherton to use for the benefit of the citizens of Atherton. If you in your wisdom said, hey, we have the same problem as 10 other communities, and we're going to go into a JPA and everybody contributes equally and everybody benefits equally, that's a good decision. But I don't see those characteristics in this particular JPA. Thank you.
Any other public comments on the JPA item number 3 on the agenda?
I agree with, my name is Ann McNerney and I live at 1 Wilkins Avenue, and I agree with Peter Carpenter. I don't think this is a very beneficial arrangement for Atherton. I think the money that comes from Atherton should stay in Atherton, and also the JPA has already demonstrated a very severe sort of disinterest in what Athertonians want by, I don't know how the original person who crafted the first report on the library, which was full of very biased information, was chosen, but it was chosen by someone connected with the JPA. And then with Mr. Rigman's thorough report, it came out that, only 47% of Athertonians, and it only represented about 1% of Athertonians, were questioned before they came out with their results, and the results were very slanted and manipulated by people who are interested in the library in the park. So that's a really glaring example of when you have people outside of Atherton, running business in Atherton. And then, again, LSA did a cut and paste job from that original erroneous report on their final report on the library in the park. So much so that they even took a quote which still had the size of the library in the park at 13,500 square feet, even though their slideshow said they had agreed on a 10,000 square feet thing. So here's 2 examples of where Atherton interests were glaringly ignored by the JPA. So I think something more equitable needs to be drafted, and I certainly don't want them to keep the $5 million. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Barry Gerard at 41 Irving Avenue. I would like to I have several questions on this, that, some of which I may be asking from ignorance, some of it, a little bit of which are redundant with what Vice Mayor asked. And these are questions that I feel should be answered as we go forward in the discussion. What does the library JPA provide to Atherton? what annual costs and fees are charged against Atherton's contributions, which San Mateo County libraries have withdrawn from the library's JPA, and why. Are Atherton's funds kept separate or commingled? If commingled, then what recourse is there in the event of any litigation and adverse judgment against the JPA? And I raise that because there are several of the California cities which have declared bankruptcy. There are issues concerning commingling of funds, meaning that the funds are not separate. They may be, in fact, be available for settlement of judgments. So that's the background for that question. And which leads to the final one. Are Atherton's contributions at risk in the event of any litigations, adverse judgments, etc.?
So can you give those questions to the city manager, and she can include them in her report when she comes up with the report to put before the council? Those are very good questions. Thank you.
Colleen Anderson, 72 Parker Avenue. As many of you may know, I was in favor of the library up until about a week ago, and someone on the internet, all these parents kept saying, what about pedophiles, what about our children? And I thought the parents were overreacting. There was a threat made on somebody's child, or children, okay? It was kind of an underlying threat, like I know where they live. I realized at that moment the light bulb went off, and I didn't want it 1 inch further from the police department than it already is. I mean, it was uncalled for, over the top. So I thought, what if we redesigned the current library, redid it, I mean really redid it nicely, and then took the rest of the money and gave them to the 5 public schools in Atherton. Selby Lane is bleeding. I mean, they're hurting really, really, really bad. That money would make all the difference in the world to their education. I am currently setting up meetings with high-end government officials who like the idea. They were going to originally see me next year, and I just got a phone call from their office saying they like the idea so much of, if it's doable, opting out of the JPA, redoing the current library, and giving the rest of the money to our 5 public schools. I'm getting the public schools involved, so as far as voting, as far as community coming together, it's not only Atherton, we'd be working with Menlo Park and Redwood City, and really build our school structure. And then have a really nice library. Add on to it, build it, retrofit it, do what you need to do. So that's where I stand. The government officials, the principal of the school, the parents, everybody's come on board. The Athertonian, the Aristochats, everybody really liked the idea of doing that. And I think it would be a win-win. We'd still have a much nicer library with top-end equipment, and so would our schools. So if there's a way to do it, I was going to call you today, and Teresa knows that, on working with you on that and working with the government officials that I am that love the idea. So, thank you.
Any other public comments? Seeing no further, I'll close the public comments on item number 3 and bring it back to the council. Again, from my perspective, I think that we need to wait till we have the report and the detailed analysis by not only city staff, but also city attorney. The questions and the issues that have been raised here by the public and also by the council are very pertinent, and I think all of us agree that you know, our tax dollars are our tax dollars, and we need to have some say over that. We want to make sure that they're managed properly, but we need to have all the facts before we actually have a discussion on this item, is my view. I don't know.
I agree.
Any other comments from council? Jared?
I'd like to get, if you can, perhaps give the council some idea of your timeline and the scope of what you think the report might cover.
City manager?
Well, the city attorney is going to do the review on the ramifications for withdrawing from the JPA. And then myself and the finance director have been working on the history, reviewing of reports, and we're still in the middle of that. With the timeline, I would expect that the staff report will come forward at the regular city council meeting in October. So I'd have everything done about a week before then.
And we do have all the questions. I wrote down all the questions that were asked, so hopefully we can answer them all.
And I think it'd be pertinent if we can get the documentation on this item. It will require some additional, you know, some real in-depth study. So if we could get it as early as possible in the process, that would be good. If it was done, say, the beginning of October, you know, having a week or two to look at it versus a couple, 3 days would be better. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
As the JPA rep, I've listened to some of the remarks here today, and I would like to simply caution that there have been some statements made that are, I know, to be wrong, and there's been some speculation that I would surmise is likely to be incorrect, but I would simply request that people hold off until we have a definitive report, be it October, which is the date, I guess, in 2 months that we're looking at, and not speculate or make statements that they believe to be correct until we definitely know what is correct. For example, there has not been anyone in the time that I know of in the last 12 years who has left the JPA. As a matter of fact, while I've been on the JPA, there have been people who've wanted to join, cities that have wanted to join because they have not been able to keep up their own libraries. And we have said, no, you cannot join the JPA because it would be a burden on the existing JPA. Likewise in Los Altos, I believe it was, Los Altos, for example, wanted to withdraw from its JPA, and not because it was not happy with its JPA, but rather the JPA was going to institute a fee on citizens who were not residents. And Los Altos did not like that idea. And what ultimately came of it, I believe, was Los Altos had something similar to a donor city fund and decided that it was going to pay for that fee out of its own donor city fund for non-residents. So whatever comes of this, I would ask that we wait until we actually know the facts rather than conjecture. Thank you.
Any other council comment? Then I think that we're in agreement that we will wait until the October meeting to have further discussion on this item. Okay. Item number 4, should the town prepare with citizen participation a master plan study for all buildings and structures, existing or planned, all town-owned properties and their usage or proposed usages? Council discussion.
Well, I have no disagreement with this, except, you know, we don't really have all that many buildings and structures, so it shouldn't be that big a deal to get this done. I mean, you know, we're a fairly small town. We all know where the buildings and structures are, and I think it's a question of trying to bring to the council at some point a fairly simple plan for what we think should be done. I don't see this as a huge task.
Other council discussion before public comment? My comment would be, we discussed this before. There is money for a master plan that was for the park, and that is actually in the budget. Last time we discussed this, we said since I think that the discussion was from Mr. Kashiwagi, and it was off the top of his head that it might cost upwards of $100,000 to do some sort of a plan, and we didn't budget for it. So that's something that we need to consider, and you know, we could ask staff to do a report on it. But let's take public comment unless somebody wants to respond.
The one thing I would like to say is I don't see any reason why we wouldn't want a master plan for the town center, and I'm talking about the town center buildings, not just the town center, as we know a town center on the ballot. I think it's a good idea. I don't know why we didn't have it done a long time ago. I think master plans are good things, just as we had one for the park. I think what I would like to know from the public is, one, would they like citizen involvement in such a master plan? What kind of master plan would they like? Would professionals and citizens, how would they like citizen selection to be done? What kind of money do they think should be spent on this? We don't have money budgeted for it right now, so what kind of priority should it be given? I'd like to know what do they believe all the buildings here in our town center, and again, I'm talking generally about our town center. All of them should be in accordance with the master plan. What kind of timeline are they thinking about? I would like to know, when the citizens were suggesting this, what was on their minds in a very kind of specific way. Because I think this is something that should have been done long ago.
Yeah, sure.
So I agree with Councilmember Dobby and also Councilmember Keithan that a master plan is a really good idea. Back, I think at the maybe January meeting in November, where the residents brought 300 signatures. No, it was in here.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
We discussed the master plan.
Right,
And I
but-
thought that we had agreed to do one, but I was told that we didn't.
No.
Yeah, in
No.
November.
Everyone, over 300 residents signed petitions. It was presented by a resident at a council meeting that please don't go any further with plans putting the library at the park until we do a master plan. It's only a prudent thing to do. It's for a town of this small size, we have limited resources, we have limited public property, we have limited facilities. We haven't done any civic building for over 50 years, I guess. I mean, you know, so to take a couple of months, 6 months even, and do a thorough analysis of, you know, what is the best land use process for our new civic buildings, because our infrastructure is decaying and we need to build new. We need to reinvigorate our town and upgrade our staff's facilities so that we also upgrade their morale and working conditions. So the